Hi, this is Doug Sleeter. Today I'm going to talk about how paradigm shifts in accounting technology are really changing the world all around us. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how chunkification of the business process and zero data entry changes really the paradigm and the way we think about entering transactions and dealing with transactions in small businesses. Let me start by kind of going through a section that I like to kind of take us back in time and say, there was this old world we've been living in for, I would say, 30 years. The old world is characterized by an accountant on the top right there and a client on the top left. And there's communication going on between the accountant and the client. And this communication has taken all sorts of forms. It's telephone calls, sometimes it's in-person meetings and those sorts of things. But that will never change, I suppose, because the accountants and the clients are always doing some sort of collaborative work together. But in the old world, what happened was we all built these desktops and LANs and servers inside our offices. So the blue boxes there represent their offices and their LANs and servers. And on both the accountant office and the client office, we have the same basic hardware setup. Sometimes you have more or less. But essentially it's Windows servers in the back room connected with LANs. Now when it comes to the live data, what I mean by the live data, I mean let's say the general ledger data file. If you're using QuickBooks, it's the QBW file. Or the CRM database may be in the server in the back office. It's almost always sitting at the client's office in their servers on their premises. The accountant, though, needs to do some work on that data. Essentially, the work product that we have is about data analysis and presentation of financial statements, tax returns, and so forth. So when the live data is sitting on the servers in the client's offices, we have a choice. As accountants, we can go and travel over to the client's offices and do the work there. Or maybe we figured out we can remote desktop, that's what that RDP means there in the middle of the screen. We could remote desktop into the client's office and essentially consume one of their machines while we're working. That's if we're pretty sophisticated. There's Go to My PC, Log Me In, several technologies there that we could be using. But that's essentially our choices, is to either go there or remote into the client's data site. And then maybe, because we really like working in our own offices, we'll take copies of the client's data and we will take it home or back to our office or whatever, and we'll do whatever it is we're doing. We're doing adjusting entries. We might be doing some of the bookkeeping. We might be troubleshooting or what I call garbage cleaning, garbage collection and cleaning up the data files, because let's face it, the clients screw up their accounting data if it's left to them doing it alone. So this is a problem. This is where we all live in this old world. The inefficiencies here are probably obvious just by kind of looking at it. But in addition to inefficiencies, look at the cost of this. We've both investing in the same hardware and software. So it's expensive. If we were able to only have one set of investment in hardware and software, boy, wouldn't that be overall less cost. Complex, this is complex because I have to coordinate with the client when we're going to have a meeting and when I'm going to work on their systems. It isn't something I can do in the middle of the night or when I'm across the country or out of town. I've got to coordinate. Also, data could get out of sync, especially if you're doing this, get a copy of the data, bring it back, work on it. Well, let me just ask you something. If you're taking the data back to your office, and the client, meanwhile, is doing their business, they're moving along, putting transactions into their system, and you've got a copy, well, how do you think those two things are going to get back together? There have been some solutions to this general problem. In QuickBooks, there's the accountant's review copy of the data and so forth. And these solutions are, I will say, part of the solution, but I've never recommended them because fundamentally this architecture, if you will, of doing business with each other is broken. So if I'm ever getting a copy of the data file, I think I'm in danger. In danger several different ways. I could get them out of sync. That was the one point. The other point is security. If you're keeping copies of your clients' data files on your own servers in your own office, well, pause a minute and think about what's in that data file. It's not just a couple debits and credits in the bank account. It's all of the employee address, phone number, identifying numbers, government numbers, and private information. Private information, maybe the customer list and the customer credit card numbers. All of that information is something that the client is bound and required to keep confidential. And if by chance there was a breach of the data that happened from your office, maybe a burglar gets in and steals all the hard drives, and they're doing these kinds of things, then you have actually caused the client to breach their requirements with credit cards as well as employees. So this is just a bad, inefficient, and unsecure world that we've been living in for some time. Now, the new world is what I like to call the new world. I mean, you call it what you will, but the world of the internet kind of solves many of the problems that we had in the old world. The first thing is, let's paint the same top. The accountant and the client are still, wherever we are, but actually we don't now have to be in our offices. We can be anywhere in the world. We're still going to collaborate instead of just communicate, with emails and text and phone conversations. We're going to now do collaborative things. So we're going to start to split up the job of who's going to enter data into the data base and so forth. So let me complete this build out of this slide so you can see kind of how it's going to go. That red dot is now the live data, and we're going to put that in the cloud. Some place in the cloud where the one data set lives, the source of truth, single source of truth, no multiple copies. We're going to surround the data with a piece of software. And in reality, it's going to be several pieces of software. But let's just imagine it was only one, just to keep it simple for a minute. Let's say it's a QuickBooks client, and I have 30 QuickBooks clients. And by the way, one client is on version 2009 and 2010 and 11 and so forth. In the old world, what I was required to do is install all those versions on my LANs and servers in order to be able to work on each of those different clients' files. In the new world, as you see here, we're going to have just for every client, we're going to log into this central cloud place, and we're going to use the software, the same software that they use to access that data. And so there's no need to worry about who's using what version anymore. No likelihood of getting out of sync with that. Now, security is always something I like to make sure we never ignore when we talk about the cloud, because so many of us are worried about the cloud. We're worried about it for a lot of different reasons. We're worried because we've heard that hackers get into the internet and they do bad things, and we're worried that we can't touch the data and have it local, and sort of there's this feeling if I can touch the hard drive, then I know I'm safe. But of course, hard drives fail even if you can touch them. So there's not even any safety in actually physically seeing the hard drive. So the security component is important to measure sort of fairly between the old world and the new world. And I'd just like to state that the old world was the most insecure data architecture we could have had. In the new world, it is only as secure as our best practices make it. So our best practices would mean we're going to put the data in a data center that is hosted by a robust company that is in the business of providing data centers. So this is 24/7 locked security with armed guards and maybe fingerprint access, and only certain people with their right ID can even get in the building. That's what I mean by a secure data center. And that's the physical security. But then there's other logical security, firewalls that you buy that are the most robust. And then the data security, the best IT professionals you can buy, if you will, to watch the security protocols. So you're going to have firewalls being configured right that protect against viruses coming in, antivirus software, and so forth. So when you have professionals making sure that the hardware platforms that we're running on are doing their job, then you're getting a better quality and more likelihood of more security than we would have in any small business, let alone the accounting office that you might have. You know, do you really have the accounting or the IT security experts on staff? My guess is no. And even if so, why are we spending for them when we could get their services included in the solution that we might do in the cloud? So I make these points about the cloud. I'm not all about just going to the cloud just because, and you know, because like it's a fad or something. No, I'm about it because it allows us to do different things that we could never even dream of before. So on the left and the right, I put some text here. On the left side, you can see what the client's duties are now with regard to managing this data we're talking about. And on the right side is what the accountant is going to do, what our duties are going to be. So one of the problems in the old world that I kind of touched on there was when the databases got into the client's offices, the clients not being experts in anything accounting would create messes that we have spent all of our last 20 years being cleanup agents for. Well, that was kind of not so good. So if we could make it so that now the accountant can realistically take over and control now the access or the entries to the general ledger, which is at the end of the day, that's what we're really as accountants focused on. That general ledger has to be right. Otherwise we have work to do before we can do the next step, which is financial analysis or tax or so forth. So on the right side, I'm saying let's now take the bookkeeping part and put it back on the accountant. And by the way, if you're a bookkeeper that you've been going out to clients and doing it at their office, this is no change, except that it makes it easier for you because you don't have to go to their office anymore. You log in and do your work. So if you're worried about the new cloud and all this stuff and how am I going to change, this is only better. You can just do what you do it at home or your office as opposed to going to the client's offices. So let me jump back over to the left where I'm talking about the clients again. They're going to go back to managing their business, which after all is what they're supposed to be doing. They'll focus on operations. They will have to record timesheets for their employees if they're time-based, and things like job costing. So if there's any work that we're doing that we need to specifically allocate to jobs, I think the clients are always going to have to own that piece because that's where the source of it all comes from. That they know which job they're doing and what's billable to what. POS, point of sale systems, I think will always be at the client site because that's just sort of the nature of the brick and mortar retail store. And the last thing I put here is the dashboard. And the dashboard is something I want to kind of come back to in a minute, but I just want to say at the end of the road here, and the real place we're trying to head, the goal, is to get clients away from their accounting systems and into a dashboard. And this could be a web page that paints for them their KPIs, their KPIs, key performance indicators, and their cash position and anything that's really important to that business owner in terms of managing the business. And managing the business is often about the data that often sits in the general ledger. So we're going to create dashboards out of that information, and we're going to have the business owner sitting there as opposed to in the checkbook or check register in an accounting software product. Now let's move over to the accountant again. This allows us to, like I said, do bookkeeping realistically now and profitably. It allows us to now really deliver the consulting that we've been trying to do. When we went out to the clients, consulting to me means we're going to go and we're going to get them set up, we're going to teach them, we're going to troubleshoot, but for the most part they're doing the data entry. Well, we can still let them do data entry. Some clients just want to do it. Okay, fine, you do the bookkeeping and I'll come in and do the consulting kind of review and adjustments and that sort of thing. So it doesn't preclude that. I'm just saying the opportunity is for us to now take on bookkeeping in addition to that consulting. But now the consulting really becomes possible. And of course payroll and taxes and CFO services, those things that we, again, always we need access to the data to do, now we can do those things much more efficiently. So what you're going to find in this new world is a dramatic increase in efficiency and reduction in the amount of time and staffing and all that stuff you need to actually achieve your work product for your client. And the last thing I put over there was dashboard, because it's the role of the CFO service or the accounting firm or whatever, because you understand what each of your clients' needs are. You're going to build these dashboards for your clients. Now, when I say build, I mean I can count about 20 different products on the market today that you could use to build and deploy dashboards for your clients. Many of them can be hosted on your own website. So in a sense, you're going to send your clients now to www.yourfirm.com, and that's where they do their dashboard reading and interactions. They might pay their bills there. They might view their cash position. They might even transfer money. Who knows? A lot of different things. But you can build that into dashboards and then host them on your own site. So obviously, the bottom here is all of the benefits this brings. Like I said, I'm not about going to the cloud just because it's a fad or because it's cloud's sake. I'm really about it because it allows us to do what we've really got to do and address the needs that business really have today. Anytime, anywhere. We've got mobile workforce now. We've got better security here than we had in the old world. It's less expensive. Now, I want to pause on less expensive because you're going to tell me, Doug, I went and I checked it out, and it's going to be more expensive because I'm going to be paying by the month as opposed to owning the license of the software. So why would I do that? It's more expensive. And I would say, okay, you got me. But not really. What's going to happen is over time you're going to realize a reduction in the amount of hardware and IT services you're buying for your on-site stuff. And that money will transfer over, and it'll be less overall to your online services costs. So don't get trapped into, oh, I looked at the dollars per month and it's too much and I'm not going there because it's more than what my license for a particular piece of desktop software is. That's a trap, and you beware of that. Obviously, the other big benefits, data's in sync, it's always live, and everything is simpler, and we don't need the IT professional in our office. All right, now let me move to the other big topic I want to talk about, chunkification of the business process. What I mean by that is, and I used a funny word because I just want you to remember this is happening, and you maybe haven't even noticed it. What we want in this world, and we're starting to see happening throughout the industry, is instead of having all-in-one software product where you got the general ledger, you got the AR, AP, payroll, and so forth. You got it all in one product, you buy it, one license, and it has what it has. And then if you need to do something for a particular client business that isn't quite doable with that particular feature in that particular piece of software, well, then you're in a trap. You've got to trick the software. So what I'm seeing in the chunkification world is by taking that data, putting it in the middle of the cloud place, the data is going to be in the cloud now, and then taking each business process, as opposed to one big piece of software, smaller pieces of software, chunks, if you will. And so I'll have my payroll chunk and my CRM chunk, and they might be 5 different vendors I can buy the best of breed for my business in. And the document management, so getting into a paperless environment, there are several different products now, chunks that help us do digital documents in cloud-based vaults. This is going on, and I can choose which one's best for my particular situation. So I can go all around this circle, and you can see I've just painted some of them, but obviously there are going to be hundreds of chunks that we can choose from. And I see this as a very good thing because it allows every business to get exactly what they want, as opposed to tricking a particular piece of software that has some features but doesn't quite work. Well, we have to do all these tricks. And believe me, I'm the master of tricks. I have written books on QuickBooks tricks and all of the different ways to do job costing and construction and real estate and restaurant. And I've got all these books, and I've been writing them for 20 years. So I get how the existing desktop software we're all using is very powerful. And if only we knew enough tricks, we could solve any client need for any business. And so what chunkification to me means, I can sort of stop focusing on those tricks and start focusing on shopping for the right one that was written exactly for that client. So that's sort of where I see with chunkification. One more thing about chunkification, e-commerce is one of the ones that sort of, you have to have a chunk for e-commerce. When somebody going to your web store to buy your stuff, you've got some business process there. It is in the cloud. Even if you don't want to go to the cloud, that is cloud. So then you're going to have to get those transactions down into your general ledger system. And if that's on the desktop, you've still got the need for a chunk to then pull data in. So the other thing about chunkification, of course, is each of these chunks need to communicate. They need to communicate not only down into the system, sort of these little arrows represent data transfer, if you will. And these arrows around the circle are, sometimes the chunks need to talk to each other. So when I get an order in my e-commerce site, I probably need to tell CRM about it, because we've been doing a marketing campaign and we need to know that the SEO campaign worked, and we need to tag all the customers who bought. So you can see the ideas here that chunkification is happening, but at the same time it's creating a whole new world for the consultant, the accounting software consultant, who goes out to the client and says, here's your system. Now you're going to say, here's your one piece of the system and this piece, and then you're going to be configuring things and putting them together. Another trend before I get into this other concept. Zero entry is a huge trend. This has been coming on for years, really, with different products that are beginning to essentially deliver for us transactions. If you go back, even in the old world, there's something called EDI, which is what some suppliers and buyers and sellers must use in order to send orders in and invoices back. EDI is a sort of an old world thing, but it's electronic invoicing and purchasing. That was a zero entry kind of a mode. Zero entry, today's world, is really exploding that whole concept. So the buyer is on the right, left, and the seller's on the right. In this zero entry world, the customer comes to a web shopping cart, or maybe to a store with a point of sale system where there's the UCR code where they scan their item. So no human is actually making any entry. If there is a human, it's maybe the customer that's doing their name, address, city, state, zip, shipping, and so forth, the instructions for shipping the item to me. Then it becomes a digital order, and the seller then receives that digitally, no data entry needed. Then it goes electronically to the pick, pack, and ship, and it gets shipped out, and there's probably an electronic, maybe shipper notification that goes electronically notifying the customers when they'll receive their shipment and so forth, with trackability. But again, no data was entered. It was just one transaction that started up here on the left, and we're just following it all through with essentially, think of them as digital pipelines of data flowing through them. And so then when the seller ships it, then there's an electronic sort of pipe of data coming back to the buyer saying, hey, there's an order, it's on its way, and by the way, you might need to then pay for it. So it becomes something where a human does do some entry here. Before they would have had to type everything in, but now what they're saying is, here's the transaction. Maybe it includes a bill that I need to pay, and maybe it needs to be coded or job costed or some other sort of, I would call it, cleaning up of the data transaction, contextualizing, if you will, the transaction, but not original data entry like we would have thought in the old world. Now that transaction then becomes something that ends up going into sort of the payables, and that again not another data entry piece there, but just it flows into the payables place. And then somebody decides to pay it, which is usually just a click of the mouse. It can be if you're using the right tools like we are. And that click of the mouse says, okay, pay this vendor on this date, this amount, and a transaction goes between banks through, direct deposit between banks, shows up in the seller's bank, and then it notifies them, hey, we've got some money. And then the last step is some human does actually now need to reconcile all the pieces. So on my big slide here, there's yellow represents the data entry pieces, and the white represents just the got it for free zero stuff. Now when you think about this, I don't think we'll ever get to zero entry, but we're going to get from what used to be 100%, let's say, to now about 5%. Now to me, that is a dramatic improvement in cost savings for the business. Now for those of you who are in the data entry business and that's your job, well, you might say this is bad news for you. No, 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 no. You are now going to be what we would have considered a replaceable resource, and now you're going to become indispensable, because instead of being the one entering them all the time, you're going to be the one sort of analyzing these digital pipelines, these different the transactions here. Is it correct? You're going to make sure that it's going right. You're going to contextualize the data by putting job codes or whatever in there. There's always going to need to be humans involved. It's just that the human that's actually typing keyboard strokes, the less of that we can get, the better. And also think of mobile. This can now happen on your mobile device, wherever you are. So many of these things just accrue to much better life for all of the people involved in all of these pieces. All right, so it really changes everything. Very little data entry, not zero, but close. Paperless document management opt-in is something that this is going to require. And so my friends at Reckon like to call this less paper. When I say paperless, you might say less paper. And I like that concept because we'll never really get paper. Here's my desk with all my papers, because I'm taking notes because I like to, okay? And you do too. So it's not about zero paper, just like it's not about zero data entry, but it is about a lot less paper. And so what zero entry requires, and this anytime, anywhere access requires, is that these, if they're paper, they get digitized and stored in a vault, so that as we're doing our work, we can access the original, source documents, if you will, to refer to or for audits or whatever. And like I said before, it's going to help you manage the data flows between chunks. And finally, the human is the one that is going to reconcile all these pieces. So now, for accountants, how does this change your life? I see this in 4 different big steps. First, you're going to have to acquire, if you're not already doing this, skills to install, configure, connect, test, monitor, all of the different pieces of getting the clients up and running on these new chunks. You may not be comfortable with that. Well, all I'm saying is these are huge new business opportunities. You're evaluating the different chunks. At the Sleeter group, this is what we do. We evaluate all these chunks 24 hours a day. That's what we're doing. We're looking at products. We're seeing how they connect to each other. We're making judgments based on what we know about how businesses work, small businesses actually work, as opposed to theory. We understand how they actually work. We understand what gets them tricked up, and we help them get through those things. So we help the developers get those processes right. So your job is to evaluate and compare and actually maybe even sell in some ways these products to your clients. More, I can go on forever about how and whether you should be sales oriented in your practice or not. There's trade-offs there. It's a business decision, but we'll go there in another talk. But I'd like you to become the change leader for your client. And I have a whole webinar on this topic as well. So change leadership to me is about taking complete control for your client, meaning don't accept engagements with clients where they just want you to come in and do a, please help me with this report. I don't take that client, because if they just want a report, that means they don't want me to really go and analyze their whole system and really understand it. So I might do a report that might be wrong, or it might be based on garbage data. So these are the things that I don't want us as accountants to do. I want us to lead, take over the whole system. Lead them by saying, for your business, I think this is the best solution with this chunk, this chunk, this chunk, and this is how we're going to configure it. And you're going to become this digital plumber, if you will. You're going to design it and deploy the products for your clients. And then finally, this leads to you being able to become a true outsourced client accounting services provider, Whereas before that was a difficult problem, the cloud makes this really, really possible and profitable. All right, now let me again pop back up to the high level here. Throughout history, there have been technologies that have been invented, and they have a certain life cycle. And this curve that you see here was first developed by Dr. Jeffrey Moore in his book Crossing the Chasm. Incredible guy. I really recommend you get that book because it has a whole bunch about the whole technology and when new technologies come, how people are afraid and how they then finally start to adopt and so forth. Excuse me. So you can see what the graph does here, it goes from left to right in time, and then the vertical axis is how many people are adopting this particular technology. So early on in a product or technology's life, you have the innovators coming in and innovating new things, and not many customers yet because they're still figuring out what they're going to do. And then along come these early adopters, and these early adopters are those ones who say, this is cool stuff, and they have to be the first one to own it, and so forth. Maybe if you've seen the Google Glass yet, the glasses from Google that have the little picture, there's a few early adopters on that, and Google's hoping that we all have these glasses that are showing us the web and identifying who you're talking to as you look at them. It says, oh, well, that's Doug Sleeter. Okay, maybe we'll all go there, but see, this is why it's kind of strange, because we view that as, wow, that's weird, but that's because that technology is in its innovation stage, and there are a few early adopters, but nobody understands, and boy, the people that are really going to adopt are either not even aware of it yet, or if they are aware of it, they think, I don't want that, I don't need that. So I think we've all gone through this in one way or another in our life as technology has been come along. So I just want you to keep this in mind as you think about what we're talking about when we say go to the cloud, and why is it important and why is it good, because there will inevitably be this curve where people, your clients, your firms, all of these people around us will adopt at different stages in this cycle. And what I like to do when I'm always thinking about my business from today and 10 and 20 years from today, I like to focus my business on the early side. Technology is somewhere in here, because I know that if I'm focusing here, then as adoption happens, I'm the one that's leading it, as opposed to if I focus over here, all the clients I have that are using these technologies, there are fewer and fewer of them. So it's just a pragmatic business point here. If you want to be in business, get on that left side of the curve. One more thing about the chasm. The chasm just represents a point at which the early adopters and the innovators, they've been looking at it. There's bugs. They're going back and forth. The early majority are just waiting for you and me, the early adopters. They're waiting for us to say, hey, it's okay. I'm using it. It's okay. It works. It's safe, or it's better. A number of these things. And I'm very stingy with my recommendations on new technologies like this, because I know those early majority and late majority people, they're trusting me to make those decisions or recommendations. And so I want you to take that same leadership role. You can't just say, well, somebody said it was good. You have to get your head in, learn it, and be the authoritative answer as to why you're recommending something or not.